So when they put information out there, I have no reason to doubt it. In fact, when I looked at the numbers, I thought that they were probably a bit conservative because they were estimating numbers. But I can tell you that the immigration department had the capacity, and since then they've become. I've heard them speaking of um, the advances that they've made in terms of um, improving their systems and using IT and so on to their advantage. So it should be easy, let me put it that way, to capture travel statistics.
Yeah.
So my question is, when we move to this, what are the processes that individuals from Dominica, Belize, or St. Vincent and the Grenadines will go through when they come to Barbados? Because recognize that CARICOM nationals are entitled to an automatic 6-month stay.
Mm-hmm.
So John Jules or Jean Pierre or whoever comes from Dominica, or Mr. Brown comes from Belize, um, Mr. Gonzalez, not necessarily the Prime Minister, but somebody with the same surname, comes to Barbados from St. Vincent and the Grenadines and decides that he or she wants to come into Barbados under this new arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
And my question, and it applies if I want to go to Belize to do the same time, or to Dominica, or to St. Vincent, or one of the islands connected to in the Grenadines. What do I do? Where can I go to find information giving me instructions? And if I understood clearly what High Commissioner Commission was saying on VOB recently, he spent quite a bit of time on late last week on the radio. They were now meeting, they being the 4 countries, meeting to work out the details. Let me summarize it like that. And such a situation is utter madness, because he compounded the confusion, or the sad situation that we were looking at in that respect, by saying
Mm-hmm.
this is something that has been pending for a while. So as it is right now, because according to the information that has been shared, a person coming to Barbados from the other 3 jurisdictions will be entitled to what we ordinarily would get for primary and secondary education, health benefits, for example. So if I turn up,
Repeat.
a person under the free movement is entitled to access education, primary and secondary.
So hold a minute, because you're going
And
too
it works
fast
the
here,
other
Miss
way.
McClean. I'm writing down because I haven't. So you're telling me that the person who is coming in, our Caribbean brothers and sisters, and we want to make it clear that Barbadians are
Or
welcoming
if we
people.
go, or if we go,
Or if we go, well, we live here, so we're talking about they coming, and we ain't going nowhere. So
okay.
the education, so they are entitled to go to the public schools. Let's break it down. The hospital, where else?
Well, like health care, they said primary and emergency care.
Right. Okay. Wow. I
So
want that to sink into Barbadians. All right, sink it in. Go ahead. Continue, Miss
So the
McClean.
question then, and I'll give you an example. Let me think of a fairly expensive medical treatment, or medical care that can be given. Somebody comes into Barbados having suffered severe kidney disease, and they are under or need to have dialysis. What happens? How does the individual access dialysis?
Mm.
Do you turn up at the hospital and say, because if I choose to come, I mean, let's look at it. Somebody may say this is extreme, but this is a reality. Let's say that I arrived in Barbados on the 1st of October, and I normally, well, I've been told that I will probably have to transition to dialysis given the condition of my kidneys, or whatever the case may be. How do I establish that I qualify based on this? Because remember, some other people are here with skills national certificates. Some people are here with the 6 months automatic. So they come essentially not necessary to a job, but looking for a job. So they might have come for the 6 months. And I'm looking at these because we only have 4 countries. But think of it, as I said, in at least 2 cases, you may find numbers of people here. So basically, the challenge really is that we have, notwithstanding the fact that this is an issue that has taken quite some time, and there's a reason for it because of disparities and so on. In fact, later on, I'm going to try to investigate because I must say I didn't follow the 2023. Well, I accept the summary of the meetings where it was agreed that this would happen. But then several countries said, we're not ready. And so my question to Barbados, having said all that I said, given your commitment to free movement going back to 2023, and the announcement of this by the Prime Minister of Jamaica at the heads of government meeting, where the Prime Minister of Barbados was the outgoing chair and who chose not to mention it but left it to her Jamaican counterpart to do. Why were Barbadians not told more? Why did you agree to a date of October the 1st without being in a position to say categorically to Barbadians, these are the requirements, these are the processes that will follow, and this is how we will do that? Now, I haven't said all of that, Marcia. I want to call again on the government of Barbados. I don't know what's happening in the other islands. I can check with some of my colleagues. Well, Bahamas is outside of this, so Bahamas does not follow the CSME arrangement as it stands. So they would not be part of this anytime soon because they're not part of the other elements of movement in terms of the automatic 6 months and so on. It's 12 countries that are involved in that, and Haiti has been excluded, as we know,
as usual.
Yes, and that's always whenever people started to attack Barbadians, I said, but we think about ourselves, but nobody thinks about, and the reality is Haiti has millions of people, and the situations are challenging, and I always say to people, the situation that Haiti faces, or we will be faced from Haitians moving, is perhaps an amplification of what would happen or what we've seen happening elsewhere.
Yeah. But Ms. McClean, somebody has a question here. Were you finishing a thought? I can't remember.
No, that's finished. Will you be free?
Yeah,
no,
will we be free?
No, not yet. They said primary and secondary education. So I presume it's nursery, primary, and secondary education.
Okay.
No.
And do they get a Trident ID?
Now, this is what nobody knows what happens. And that's the key question I was asking. What happens when a person, he or she comes alone or with family? What happens when they arrive at Grantley Adams? Do you present yourself and say, I am a national of Dominica, here is my identification? Do I go as soon as I land tomorrow to the office and apply for an ID card?
Mm-hmm.
What do I do? And if I get an ID card, well, I guess it would look like everyone because there's supposed to be no distinction between nationals. Now, Marcia, I'm going to introduce another issue, and this relates.
Right. So before you do that, Ms. McClean, just letting everybody know that in 7 minutes, then we can call in. Okay, in 7 minutes. At 9 o'clock is our calling time because I see lots of people have lots of questions and comments. Get ready to call that 236 number 7000. We're going to put it up on the screen.
They said they will come here before Christmas. They will be marching with us. Now, Marcia, I want to introduce another issue because I remember this was an issue and it came up at a meeting of the heads. I would have to check my records. We were in Belize, actually. Dominica has a citizenship by investment program where I have absolutely no idea. I suspect that Dominica probably has sold more passports than they have populations on island.
Yes.
So let's assume that the population of Dominica is 70,000, I got to check the exact figure. And they have just as many or more people with Dominican passports. They are effectively Dominican citizens.
Mm-hmm.
There was this issue in in Belize, where there was a discussion. It was a heads of government meeting, and there was a discussion about the rights of those persons who have citizenship by investment, who bought passports to Dominica, St. Lucia, Antigua, St. Kitts, etc. And people were saying, some of the persons were saying, no, they're not treated quite the same. Maxine McClean produced a copy of a LIAP magazine with some advertisements for a group of these islands. And contrary to what some heads were saying, no, it's not, they're not quite treated the same. I'm trying to simplify it. The advertisement, which was carried in this LIAP magazine, and I should have a copy somewhere, I believe, I'll look for it. The advertisement said, in essence, that those persons, when they bought those passports, were entitled to all that the citizens born in those countries were entitled.
Okay.
And if that were the case, it meant that they were entitled to whatever whatever rights and privileges and so on these countries' citizens were entitled in relation to others. Mm-hmm. So think about it. We have agreed to this free movement. And in the case St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I remember Prime Minister Gonzalez was very adamant that he did not support schemes of citizenship by investment. And I suspect, if I remember correctly, that is still his stance. But in the case of Dominica, my question to Ambassador Commijon, because he's the one we heard the other day, and certainly to the minister responsible for immigration, that's the Minister of Home Affairs, I believe. That's Wilfred Abrams, I believe, who was recently acting Attorney General, and to the Prime Minister, who is responsible within CARICOM. I think Barbados still has responsibility, quasi cabinet responsibility, as they call it, for the CSME, free movement and so on. To tell me, how are we going to treat these probably hundreds of thousands of Dominicans who became citizens by investment? Because if you're saying that, and that applies, you know why? Because somebody asked about vetting people, and the truth is we have had instances of individuals, and I wouldn't specify countries now, but Dominica, St. Vincent, not St. Vincent, sorry, I just say that Prime Minister Gonzalez was not part of that, but we have had cases where several governments have indicated to some of the countries of the OECS who have citizenship by investments that people had been granted passports, people of dubious or criminal character. So that's no secret. That has happened before. And so my question is, what is the status of those citizens by investment? Do they get treated as a citizen born in Dominica? Because that's a special case. And if and when this is broadened, we have other members of the CARICOM community under whom that falls. So I think, Marcia, we have really a situation where at the end of the day, we are about to embark on a significant initiative, it is really, I guess, a test case of what to expect going forward. But where, as usual, the members of this administration, I wouldn't bother to speak for other countries. I don't know what Belize is doing. I can only go by what Ambassador Commission said, and I repeat, he said that they were discussing the, I would call it the finer details. And people always say the devil, I would say the difficulties are in the details. And we saw, and he can relate to this, Ambassador Commission, when on coming to office, this administration sought to address the situation of Haitians. And then we had an unfortunate development where Barbadians were being asked to help pay for tickets to have the Haitians go back to Haiti. Now, my whole approach to Haiti is that, and is that we need to, let me put it this way, we need to help Haitians build Haiti. And one of the things that we in CARICOM should be pushing for is an end to what I call the destruction of the economy of Haiti with a lot of free, you have all of these, what you call them, missionaries carrying a lot of old clothes and people's rejects, and it does not allow the Haitian entrepreneur, the Haitian small business person, the Haitian people to develop their markets, to develop, goods and services and so on in the way that they should. And as we facilitate that, even if it means bringing Haitians into the other parts of the region to train and develop on some of the intention of improving, their skills and whatever, their systems, but to build Haiti, not to bring them to exploit them as workers, paying them cheap wages, etc. And capitalizing and benefiting from their misery and hardship. So it really tells me, Marcia, that as it's just another one of those things where the government of Barbados will have to go and do a whole set of rejigging and damage control and revisiting or procedures and all, because they have not done this. This is the article here. IMO. It says, as of March 2025, the data mapping report by the International Organization for Migration, IMO, Coordination Office for the Caribbean reveals that Barbados has received more immigrants than its people emigrating, which is not surprising, because Barbadians will go to places where they see it to be better. You want me to continue reading some of it?
Yes, continue reading, but I want to remind people, because we don't want to be as clear as we're going on and on and on.
Not letting them call.
Right. So we want you, guys, this is your time. I know you must have a lot of questions, especially after we've read this article here. And so the numbers on the screen, and we are waiting for you to call. Okay. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Ms. McClean.
Okay, well, it says here, with an estimated migrant stock of 30, I don't like the word stock. I would say with an estimated stock, sound like an animal or something. With an estimated migrant population of, I think that's what it is, of 35,187 after the first half of 2024, as collected by United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA. This influx counts for 13% of the population and has brought people from countries such as Guyana, 6,728, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 3,177, the United Kingdom, 2,560, St. Lucia, 2,220, and Trinidad and Tobago, 1,520.
Okay, pause there, Ms. McClean. I think because I want to make sure that we understand. So look at those figures, Barbados. Okay, so it's based on, this is from the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA. And this is saying to us that after the first half of 2024, that we would have seen an 13% of our population
About, yeah, migrants, which equated to about 13% of the
About
population.
13% already of the population is of migrants. So can it tell you to the 30 over 35,000 out of the 280,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I want people to understand. Continue, please, Ms. McClean.
And based on that, they about half of that, because I was adding up the numbers roughly in my head,
Mm-hmm.
comes, so about 16,000 or so is seven. If you round the Guyana, seven, and three is 10, and then another three is 13. About 17,000 of those, about half of them, come from one, two, three, four, five countries. Jamaica is not there. Um, you know, you have St. Lucia, but so in essence, you can see that there are other countries, and then it doesn't have the non-Caribbean people in there as well. So what it says, several countries saw Barbadians emigrating, including St. Lucia with 390. So 390 went to St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines with 361. Additionally, in terms of refugees and people who sought asylum that came from Barbados, the IMO reported that 309 people were refugees, with 444 people sought asylum away from the country for the year 2024. So what it is saying is that when we look at these numbers, a significantly lower number of Barbadians are leaving Barbados as opposed to the numbers that are coming in. And this number kind of speaks to what I was saying, because as I said, there are significant numbers here. And the numbers that we see from CARICOM, because we're talking about free movement in relation to CARICOM as the major issue, the numbers that we see don't typically relate to skilled nationals. Those are a much smaller number.
Mm-hmm.
And I anticipate that in the first instance with free movement, those numbers would be small. So when we start to talk about the movement of Caribbean people, the issue, and I don't want to say the problem, it can become a problem if their needs cannot be properly met.
Yes.
But the issue is much bigger than skilled nationals or those who will be entitled to move. But I'm just saying we're going to compound the problem, especially if we do not have a proper system of identifying those persons, because the difference between a Vincentian coming here with the 6 months automatic, he or she is not entitled to the free education and so on. So I think what we need to be able to look at, Marcia, and we can delve into this on another occasion, would be to look at the respective entitlements. You know, what does a person coming in for 6 months automatic stay, what can he or she access, or whatever the case may be. And secondly, in light of all of this, I am saying to Barbadians, we should be asking, I, Maxine McClean, certainly am asking, can we have a situation where there are reports prepared? It is possible to do it on a monthly basis, because I have had those reports, and I've shared some already on this program. Can we have reports showing the arrivals and departures of persons? Can we have information which breaks down now in terms of skilled nationals, those coming in with the certificates, and then the numbers in relation to people who are relocating to Barbados. And of course, we want to hear what happens when a person gets here, because what we do not want to see is a set of people coming who have no intention of relocating here, but getting access to the things that we say we are offering those who move, under the free movement regime.
Yeah. There's a question on the screen there, Miss McClean. Somebody's asking.
How
Yeah.
were these countries chosen? They chose themselves. They agreed to participate. As I indicated, there was an agreement that we would move to that, and it has been something negotiated for years. But it's a question of countries saying ready to participate.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, because you see, you cannot say I want our population, our people, to participate in movement outward without being prepared to have movement inward.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a question of, I mean, because it may be a case of, take Antigua and Barbuda, for example. They have had over the years a lot of movement into Antigua, into their country. I understand that given their of the relationship to the Republic, for example, there are a lot of Dominicans and not
Yes.
Dominicans. Dominicans is interesting how we the difference in who have familial connection with Antigua and Barbuda. So you will
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of people there. Then you will hear somebody's father or mother was from Antigua, whatever.
Yes.
Uh, Similarly, when we saw a lot of Guyanese in Barbados, Antigua was experiencing the same thing. And their position is they are a relatively small economy. And I remember back then when I was minister, that they felt that the pressures that such movement might exert on their infrastructure and so on had to be taken on board.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, so when we talk about schools and health, we recognize that there are certain constraints. Our teachers in primary complain that they would like smaller classes. Now
Mm-hmm.
we hear of an aging population, and that is a reality. But at the same time, we have certain constraints. We hear about, I mean, I have seen persons, and sadly, I can tell you that I am familiar with at least one case because we hear of people who used to go to the eye clinic at the hospital, and every 6 months they would get a renewed prescription for drops, but they never got a chance to see the ophthalmologist. Persons with cataract, that's one thing. Persons with glaucoma is another problem. And I have seen people's eyes deteriorate to the point they're either blind or legally blind. And with cataract, you can get surgery and it can reverse the situation. There's with glaucoma, when that eye is damaged, there's no reversing. And so the question is, if we can satisfy the demand of the people on the ground right now, when we start to open the doors, I mean, these are the practical issues. Housing. Housing, people will tell you that finding accommodation is hard. My question, and I raised it before, what are the housing conditions under which um, migrant workers are living, and how is it going to become more difficult if other people come into the market and are looking for housing? Are we going to see a deterioration in the quality of living standards and living conditions, or are we
Mm-hmm.
going to see um, the opposite? I mean, what categories of workers come? In fact, Marcia, unless if you don't have a caller, I want to raise the issue of
Well, we have some more. We have a question here because
okay,
since they're not calling, right? Just
okay,
hang on
mhm,
there. I want to try to be of
okay. The question.
someone is asking, does the legislation allow them to vote?
Marcia, from what again, I would assume so, provided that they get their names on the voters list. Um, let me respond to that, and I would say that they come here as, and it says they be treated ordinarily. All I can say, and this applies to the next question, will they be required to pass a medical exam? I have seen nothing to tell us about the procedures or the processes that anybody comes in. Because if you go back to the comments that you hear, they come and the restrictions are removed. Tell me exactly what that means.
What they mean by that? And so
Yes,
it's not.
nobody has said that on initial entry, this is what you present, whatever the case may be, or this is what you do in order to get an ID card. Because to vote, you need to be registered. If you get an ID card, then your name gets on the list. You know,
Mhm.
um, so basically, to the unseen eye is watching. If the immigrants will be entitled to all the rights, can you tell me if they will also? Yes, once they hey, and think about it. Yes, as far as I know, and until they show me something else, And the question is, I mean, because you come here, you want to open a bank account, you need to have an ID card.
ID, right? How are you going to
So,
do that?
so you're gonna have to go and do that. You want to drive a car, you're gonna have to go and get a driver's license. So I think, and the question is, do you have a mechanism set up which says, as I said, John Brown presents himself. Brown is a surname that we hear in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So I will say from St. Vincent,